Jeremy, from a coach's point of view, what are the practices that are out there to help players develop?
Okay. Well, there's a number, obviously, in terms of specific to each domain, that's batting, bowling, fielding. There are game-based practices in terms of creating a game and setting it up and allowing players to learn through the playing of game and exploring and trying to find ways and strategies to perform in those games. Variable practices in terms of changing a feed or targets, moving targets, still targets, different size balls. So you can change a practice or fixed practices, which is very much a kind of maybe what might be interpreted as a mechanical way of practicing in terms of a consistent feed and a consistent desired response, which is fantastic, obviously, for ingraining maybe a certain skill, high repetition. However, sometimes for some young people those can be a little bit challenging in terms of being able to continually do them for a long period of time. So I think for young people it's very important to help them understand what practice is, but also how they've got to where they've got to, and actually how their learning is taken place. And generally what we've seen from, I suppose, talking to young players about how they've got to where they've got to and why they're as good a player as they are, is that actually they don't recognise the learning journey they've actually been on. And you will talk to some young people who would say, "Oh, cricket's in my genes," and you sort of ask them about why that is, and they'll say, "Oh, my dad always played." You say, "Okay, so tell me about your dad always playing." And they'll say, "Well, every summer since I was born, I've pretty much spent every Saturday a couple of weeknights at a cricket ground." And you say, "Well, what did you do when you were there?" "Well, my dad was always playing, didn't have anything to do, so I just played with the other kids that were there." What did you play? They would have played football, they would have played cricket, they would have messed around different catching games, and you start to draw it out, actually, before children actually come to maybe a formalised practice environment with a coach in a sports hall or a ground, they've actually done nigh on 9 years of learning. However, sometimes for young people, when they come into those situations, they don't actually recognise that all that play is actually learning. And then when they come into a practice environment which is formalised, and they think, "Well, hang on, I'm not sure if I like this. This isn't what I normally do, or if this is learning, then this is not really I'm not sure I like this." So I think the challenge for coaches is to recognise that actually a lot of children's learning has come through play. It's not some natural gift or some attribute that they've just acquired, and cricket's not necessarily in their genes, it's more in their environment in which they've grown up in, and they've grown up playing cricket, and that's how their learning's happened. So it's helping them transition from this quite explorative play and completely free, no judgment, no one making any assumptions or trying to measure them or anything else like that. So they've come from this free play environment, and now they're coming into an environment where actually there are drills and there's a coach standing at the back of the net watching them, and it's making sure that when they come in there, actually you can create that feeling of safety and almost that same excitement and feeling of being free that they've had when they've been playing on the side of the cricket ground, actually within the coaching environment when you're delivering your sessions and bringing them in. So certainly those game-based practices of actually making sure kids feel free to have a go, and it's fun and it's enjoyable, but also there's not too much emphasis on winning, and the emphasis on improvement and exploration is really important to integrating kids from that experience of play into the experience of more structured, formalised practice. And I think when you've got that, then you can start bringing in the more fixed practices, if you like, which are about developing skill, because hopefully you've developed their awareness, and you're trying to say to them, okay, well, you might use the analogy of people learning to drive, and we would all know that when we learn to drive, if we're learning to drive a new route, it's quite conscious, you have to think about it, navigate your way, but after doing it 100 times, most of us would never think about our drive to work, and that's because we've ingrained that into our unconscious mind, and helping kids understand that you have to do that repetitive bit to ingrain skills sometimes. But actually we need to do the bit of actually helping them understand what a practice environment is and why it's important before necessarily we take these kids that have this wonderful free existence of play and experience of play into a very fixed practice and methodical kind of drilling them. So I think it's helping children understand what practice is and why it's important.